Does McQuinn know she has to do that every morning? Hang on. You're going to come in with a hymn. Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Church. This is our in-gathering Sunday, as we seem to be gathering in right now. It's great to be together once again as a congregation, as the winds of summer have blown us in myriad directions. It's always good to return to our beloved community. Here we are reminded of our highest aspirations, and here we are inspired to bring our gifts of love and service. Symbol of light and of knowledge, symbol of warmth and freedom. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. Here we gather to celebrate hope and the infinite possibilities of love. Can we open our service to hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Welcome, young people, kids, youth. This is our real church right here, our church in the making, and we're so very happy to have you with us and so very proud that you have chosen this church to be part of your religious growth and maturity. Wonderful to have you on board. And I'd like to introduce two very key people. First is the Director of Religious Education, Julie Miller. And yeah. Julie kind of directs traffic from birth until about 6th grade, 7th grade, and then Reverend Matthew Cockram takes over and does the youth. And so, Matthew, you're on.
Good morning. Hello. You know, last year, I think it was our middle school group that sold a T-shirt as part of its fundraisers that had this slogan on it that said, "Where all your answers are questioned. Was that you guys, or was that a couple of years ago? Anyway, where all your answers are questioned. Questions are a big part of being in this religious community, and so I want to start out this year with a question for all of you. And I'm going to ask it first, and then I want you to ask it to each other. And the question is very simple. What are you here for? Now, I want you to turn to different people around you, and I want you to ask that same question, but each time emphasize a different word. And if you want to do it with some attitude like, what are you here for? or, what are you here for? But each time, turn to one person next to you and ask that question, emphasizing a different word. So you've got 5, what are you here for? 5 times. Go. What are you here for? What are you here for? Okay. Everybody got to their 5? If you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear my voice, clap twice. If you can hear my voice, clap 5 times. If you can hear my voice, clap 10 times. Thank you. You can count, too. I see that now. The simple truth is that though we may come here hungry, wanting to receive something, we are all, by virtue of being here for something bigger than ourselves. So if you're here for religious education, you may be here to learn, to grow, to teach, but you're also here to give that back out into the community, to learn by teaching, to give because you've learned. You're here, whether you like it or not, under the mission and vision of this place and its principles and its values. You're here even if you're here for small group ministries, for any part of lifespan religious education, for the young adult ministries, the social justice ministries, for hospitality, for music ministries. You are here for something more than you. And chances are you're here for something more than you know. So my charge to you this year, this day, this minute is to be an ambassador for that. You are an ambassador for something bigger than yourself, bigger than your own needs, even bigger than this beautiful, beloved community and its mission and vision and values. So may you indeed truly open your heart, open your ears, open yourself to what the world is calling you to be. Welcome back to First Unitarian Church.
Good morning. And good morning to each of you, and welcome back. Greetings. And as you can see, we have grown a little. So please join me in welcoming all the children and the youth back to our church this year for 2016-17. Back. If you're new to our community this year, we invite you and your family to join us. We have a welcome table and a religious education table out in Elliott Hall. Look for us. We'll try to answer your questions. There's a significant number of adults helping. One of us ought to have some answers. And if you're attending as an old-timer, we're awfully glad to have you all back, and it's nice to see a number of parents up here among us. This year, our RE team is blessed to have Lissa Lander joining us. As she likes to say, the new Nancy Mose. Lissa, give a wave. You'll still see that wonderful face in the choir from time to time, but she is here keeping Matthew and I on the right path, mostly me. Under Lissa's watchful eye, we're going to work hard to communicate with all of you in ways you've expressed that will be useful to you, both to receive and send messages back to us. Loose translation, that means technology tools, which I guess I'm going to have to give up my beloved pencil and paper. And whatever works, Pony Express, pigeons, satellite, we'll use it all this year. And just kidding. But we're going to get a lot more effective at using tools that work for all of you. Also, Lissa has put up, and we will all use it this year in RE, great bulletin boards in Elliott Hall. If you want to stay connected to us, young and old adults, take a peek at those boards to see what we're all about this year. Our theme this year is World Religions, Building Bridges. So the kids, all of you will have some traditional time with UU curricula. Upper grades, you're going to have some time, high schoolers, just to discuss and hang out in community service. Other kids will be involved in the teachings of OWL all year. And then 6th and 7th will be involved in world religions also. This year, our 5th graders are moving up to join this year's 6th graders, 6th and 7th. And our hope is that we will build strong bonds and connections among all of you as you transition and move up through the church, so that we hope we will have strong bonds among all ages. First Sunday of every month, it will feel just like this, Old Mother Hubbard. We will come in for what I will call Sanctuary Sunday and join all of you in the congregation. And we will have what we call this year family chalice lighting. It's nice to see the kids, but it's also nice to put their family with their faces. So we will have a family chalice lighting the first Sunday. The third Sunday of every month, our church has taken on helping the homeless teen shelter with Volunteers of America. Our kids don't even know this, but our preschoolers through 5th graders, the third Sunday of every month, we're going to help decorate bags with our sayings and happy faces, load up those bags with yummy, delectable sandwiches and carrots and cookies, and we'll deliver them to 40 homeless teens that are out working on Sundays in the community. So that will give us a way to be involved. We'll do a number of other things for service projects this year. The grown-ups have a lot of great ideas, so hopefully you're going to think they're good ideas too, and we'll work with you. Finally, as we gather on this new church year, I want to introduce, as I did in the beginning, all the kids from our youngest members. We've got pre-kindergartners in here right through our 12th graders. You are all friends, guys, and when Matthew asked, why do we come? Because I feel a real kindred spirit with all of you and a strong friendship. And that doesn't mean as friends we're always going to agree on things, but friends stick together, and we're going to share our talents, and we'll have some crazy moments. And I joked with the adults at the 9 o'clock service, sometimes instead of Unitarians, I think we feel a little like lunatarians, but we'll make it all work. And friendships are based on connecting with each other. So kids, just a reminder, in our church, we are free to make friendships. We are free to take hands with people that don't look like us, or think like us, or act like us. Today's a new start of our church year. We're going to come together and treat all people kindly. The adults could use a dose of that right now in our nation. Because everyone really are our brothers and sisters. We're going to take care of the earth because it's home to all of us, and we're going to live lives of goodness and love, and that's how we're going to make the world the best place it can be. Welcome back, one and all, to a new year of religious education.
cool. And I've been waiting for the day when kids, would outnumber the adults. And I think the day has arrived. And it's a wonderful, wonderful moment in our church. And of course, couldn't help but think that probably 80% of the young folks gathered here were born after 9/11, and the remaining ones were babies that have absolutely no memory. It was 15 years ago today. September 11th fell on a Tuesday 15 years ago. And I know we all remember where we were, what we were doing, when we heard the news, and the shock that just took over our whole human landscape. Made it to church a little bit later in the morning, I was to find that the phones kept ringing off the hook. And it was interesting because people were calling not to ask if there was going to be a service that night, but asked what time the service would be. And so David and Sylvia Barron and I put together a service which was probably as simple a service as you can imagine. These are for people, not only members and friends of this congregation, but neighbors all around needing a place to be. So David played some beautiful music that was indeed very reflective. Sylvia and I lit some candles and said very few words. In fact, there really were no words that could touch what people wanted to hear. What was essential that evening was that all of us, complete strangers, members of this congregation, that we were together. The pews were absolutely packed, and we know that we needed this time together in a sacred space just to feel the empathy that was not only contained in this chapel, but throughout the country and the world. So on this September 11th, let us take a moment to unite our minds and our hearts in a spirit of prayer and meditation. O Spirit of life and love, we gather in this humble yet exquisite chapel, as many of us have done so 15 years ago. At that time, we searched for hope in the midst of darkness. A decade and a half later, we still yearn for hope. We still aspire to promote harmony and understanding in this pluralistic world of ours. We want to grow and gain a deeper awareness of our own tradition, learning the wisdom that has always called us to peace and greater hospitality. And we want to grow and gain a deeper awareness of the tradition of others, to learn that all the prophets, the world's religions, believe that manifesting love and kindness and compassion towards humankind, that's what reveals the face of God. Our greatest challenge is to move away from the belief of one absolute truth. There are many truths. Truth can be found everywhere. You know, it's said that the opposite of truth is not falsehood. The opposite of truth is another truth. Truths must be able to coexist side by side in a world of great, magnificent, beautiful diversity. All truths are somehow absorbed in a common humanity. Why? Because we all, every one of us throughout this world, experience birth, sickness, death, and the mourning that follows death. And each tradition honors the human experience, knowing that we are all finite. Each tradition ascribes sacred value and healing and promise. Because that's what traditions do in order to give the human spirit hope. Now, we're reminded today that the world still awaits a new harmony to bless us, a transition from fear to trust, from ignorance to understanding. This is a new path upon we must all now walk, and we can't just leave this work to others or leave this work to governments. It's up to us. We need to search our hearts to make this world safe and peaceful. Amen. McQuina, thank you. How fortunate we are to have you here this morning. Your program notes will tell you that McQuina placed first in the American Protege Competition. And if you ever wondered what a protege looks like, that's what a protege looks like. I always wondered, how do you pick out a protege in a crowd? I don't know. But congratulations and good luck to you as you continue your career, taking you to New York, I believe, in December. So good luck to you. Have a couple of announcements that I want to quickly run by you. Want to mention that, first of all, this Friday, unbelievable, in this church this Friday, 7 o'clock, all 6 gubernatorial candidates for Utah will be here. And they're going to be discussing environmental issues facing Utah. It's going to be all about environmental issues. Were there any environmental issues confronting us in Utah? I didn't know. So if you're wondering if there are any environmental concerns, be sure to show up. All 6, and some of those parties are weird, but the incumbent will be here along with his challengers. So please mark that, Friday, 7 o'clock. Also want to point out that in addition to our Sunday school kids making sandwiches for homeless teens, this is a whole new venture that we have embarked on. We're going to be serving, preparing and serving 1 breakfast a month, 1 lunch a month, 1 dinner a month for about 40 to 50 homeless teens, 9th South and 4th West. There's a sign-up sheet. We have already just exceeded beyond expectations. People will be doing this about once a quarter. That's all because we have so many volunteers, but we can use more. Please sign up at the table on the east end and just mark your preference if it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. That's going to be a very busy table because we're also collecting names of those who want to participate, and I hope you will, in a UU orientation class. It's a chance for newcomers or people who are relatively new to meet with Matthew, Julie, me, a board member, to discuss some UU history, theology, and of course this church. So please, if you're interested, sign up so we know if we need to provide childcare and also how much wine we need to buy for when we take our intermission. Intermission is always so much fun with these things. Also, I think I want to announce, just for my last announcement, that on Friday, September 30th, we're going to have a special fundraising event here to help our high school kids continue with the service project they do. And they have gone over the last, 10 or 12 years to all places in our country to provide service to people in need. We need to help them get to their destination. On Friday, September 30th, and we're taking your donations now, we're having an evening with Robert Fulghum. Robert Fulghum is a great author, Unitarian minister, a very funny guy, very deeply concerned about what's happening in the world and helping the youth get to their destination to help others. So it's going to be a very spectacular evening. It's dinner. High school kids are going to have their own jazz band. Robert Fulghum, it'll be terrific. The offering will now gratefully be received, a chance to greet one another, bid each other welcome, and I am not going to be shaking any hands because you may have detected I'm getting over a cold. Of course, I like to say I am no longer contagious, but you never know if there's still one lurking germ. So I'm just going to go by and nod. Okay. Our in-gathering Sunday, certainly as was demonstrated this morning, a joyous time of reuniting with friends after a summer. God, these summers seem to get shorter every year. But in-gathering Sunday marks the beginning of a return to church and a return to church commitments. Sunday school resumes with great programs to educate our youth in the progressive principles that demand us to open our hearts to compassion for those who struggle and are too easily forgotten. We also aim to stretch the minds of our youth in order for them to better understand this very complicated world of ours. We make them more aware of their liberal foundations and how the pursuit of justice and believing that every single person is entitled to human rights and human dignity, that these are all components of what constitute a moral life. The theme this year for our youth is world religions, a subject for which I think we could all stand to benefit. This Sunday, we renew our commitment to all facets of this spirited church community, from making coffee to ushering, to welcoming visitors and caring for members and friends who need our support. And we commit ourselves again to music, personal growth, social justice, eco-justice, and to making this 125-year-old church sustainable well into the future. In-gathering Sunday is a time of exuberant connections or reconnections and an occasion to remind ourselves that belonging, that very sacred sense of belonging to a community that touches minds and hearts. This belonging augments our deep appreciation for the chance to work and worship with others, to unite in a powerful way to give voice and muscle to building a just and peaceful world. Unfortunately, in-gathering also coincides with the event seared into our memories forever, when 15 years ago today, our naive assumption that our nation was somehow exempt from the strike of terrorism, this was shattered in tragic proportions. And I know I'm not the only minister who wrestles with the sobering memory of 9/11, falling precisely on the day we want to celebrate our return to officially start a new church year. When September 11th falls on a day other than Sunday, I focus mainly on a topic I hope that will be more compatible with re-energizing our spirits and renewing the covenants that we make to one another in a church community. And even the last time September 11th fell on a Sunday, I ignored it and proceeded with more typical Sunday morning fare. I don't know, this Sunday, maybe because it marks 15 years, I simply cannot avoid addressing an issue that I believe, an issue that is still very much in your hearts at this moment. It is very much alive, this issue. If we just stop long enough to consider not just how much the world has changed in the last 15 years, but also how we personally have changed as well. Suddenly, there was a new normal. No more meeting and greeting friends at the gates at the airport when they get off their plane. Endless lines before boarding a plane to check our bodies for hidden explosives. No more than 3 ounces of anything fluid to be brought past the checkpoint, a rule that I always forget every time I fly. But then it gets embarrassing. A new experience, really, of vulnerability. And we kind of hit on the head with a sledgehammer about the future. What's going to happen? What's going to happen tomorrow and the years to come. You know, the new normal hit my favorite comedian of all times, George Carlin, particularly hard. As unbelievable as this may sound, on September 10th, 15 years ago, George Carlin finished recording his 1-hour HBO special called I Kinda Like It When a Lot of People Die. George Carlin, who has great comedic timing, was not so fortunate in his timing with earth-shattering political events. Why did he do this? Well, Carlin works with irony very well. And this particular HBO special aimed to hold up a mirror to the public by satirizing what he called American bloodlust. American bloodlust. And this is reflected, he said, just look around, look how we tune into professional wrestling, crime stories, and the way the evening news focuses on mass destruction, making fires and earthquakes and mudslides and street violence a source of entertainment. He claimed that we are a people of dark thrills. His comedy routine called for him playing a sociopath who loved disasters. They figured, why not? I'm just going to take this to the extreme because Americans really seem to be fixated on all the disasters. Well, whether that was funny or not, or whether it was true or not, he wisely pulled the HBO special from airing. It was a quick decision, but then again, everything in our nation seemed to change on a dime. I'll tell you one bit of irony that happened 2 years prior in a special George Carlin had produced in 1999. He tried to warn Americans in what he already perceived back then was a very dangerous path, or this trend that we seem to be on. He said, and I quote, "Americans are always willing to trade away a little of their freedom in exchange for the illusion of security." Americans are always willing to trade away a little bit of their freedom in exchange for the illusion of security. It was as though Carlin, who died in 2008, anticipated where we find ourselves today. The freedoms that were once intrinsic to our democracy are on the chopping block this election. We face actually a spiritual crisis in America as we struggle with this enormous angst generated by a whole new wave of terrorism, unlike anything that we experienced in 9/11. Our thinking about terrorism, our perceptions of terrorism have changed dramatically since the attacks on September 11th, 2001. At that time, and of course shortly thereafter, the enemy, and I want to put enemy in quotes, the enemy, whether Al-Qaeda or some other group, was perceived as a cohesive group that dwelled far away. Terrorists, in our old way of thinking, coordinated military-style assaults against targets, mostly civilian targets, that held either symbolic or political value. So our thinking, some 15 years ago, entailed the belief that we could monitor and probably disrupt such groups by expanding our intelligence at the NSA, National Security Administration, or funding a whole new department, Homeland Security. We felt deeply, maybe we just wanted to believe it, the enemy could be defeated. Our main concern years ago was only that the terrorists would develop more sophisticated methods. But the threat still came from what we considered clearly identifiable sources that, of course, could be disrupted by targeting their leaders and or seizing their territory. And you know, even if this were true, and that we could hypothetically destroy the Islamic State's caliphate in Iraq and Syria, its jihadist propaganda, you know, this is a whole new age. The propaganda would survive online. Social media has made everything possible, including our worst nightmares. And over the last few years, we have witnessed a new phenomenon described as, and it gives me chills just to think about it or even articulate it, this new phenomenon called soft targets. Islamic militants attack hotels, shopping centers, train stations, airports, areas that are populated, but because of the seeming randomness, rarely defended. And then came the rise, and this, here we go, how our vocabulary has changed. Then came the rise of the lone wolf attacker, who acts on their own without training or even contact with a terrorist group. San Bernardino, Orlando, Nice come quickly to mind. Attacks planned with the minds of individuals whose intentions remain hidden until the murders and atrocities and the chaos began. Many leading experts in this whole new field called the study of radicalization. Could you have imagined that 15 years ago? There's now a whole discipline called the study of radicalization. Well, these experts concluded that Western citizens who turn to terrorism are not deeply ideological or even religious. They come to terrorism as a way of bringing meaning to their lives or to explain their own sense of helplessness or isolation. And so what are we to do? Are we to patrol every gay bar in America? Are we to patrol every bistro in Paris to feel safe? George Bush's War on Terror began September 20th, 2001, 9 days after the Twin Towers fell. And this war on terror, these past 15 years, has not delivered safety to Western populations. So this enormous gap between rhetoric and reality begs the question, why does this war never feel like we are approaching victory? And yet, the terminology of war continues, used very recently by both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Just the language, fighting a war on terror. The image of war as a means to conquest tries to quell the fears of Americans. But isn't that language of war growing rather suspect? After all, how do you defeat an ideology? Or even more simply than that, how do you stop a truck from being turned into an instrument of mass slaughter on the sands of the French Riviera? How do you stop a pressure cooker bomb made from ordinary kitchen materials from being exploded at the Boston Marathon? How can you stop anything from being turned into a weapon? This new reality is beginning to seep through and having an impact on our consciousness, a way of thinking, our way of being, and thus prompts this wave of fear that's responsible for pushing the elimination of civil liberties and fanning the fires of nativist intolerance. Now, clearly, the world has been transformed by terrorism of a different kind from what we experienced 15 years ago. And there's so much of it. Take for just a recent example of just how this the dynamics of this, how real it's become. I'm going to take one arbitrary month, November 2014, not even 2 years ago. In that 1 month, there were 664 jihadist attacks in 14 countries, killing a total of 5,042 people. So terrorism is not going to end suddenly or spontaneously. It's not going to disappear from our lives as though it were an historical footnote of that frightening period of time we remember all too well. The specter of fear raised by terrorism is understandable. I mean, fear, it's part of human nature. I think we all get that. Of course, we are shaken to the core when CNN sends footage onto our TV screens that depict the horror of normal, everyday life interrupted by irrational murder, innocent civilians who just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's a small leap to think that could happen to me, because it happens so randomly anywhere. It could happen to me. So how do we cope? If we learned anything to date, it's that terrorism is not a military strategy. It poses no existential threat. Neither the U.S. or the European Union will be conquered, destroyed by military extremists. Terrorism, instead, is a psychological weapon, making people feel that they are targets, that they have been made unsafe, that they are vulnerable, and begin to make some difficult choices as a way of feeling less vulnerable. And so terrorism, yes, terrorism has succeeded, I believe, in poisoning our politics. And by extension, it has driven far too many people in our nation to extreme xenophobia and the illusion that a hard-edged demagogue can rescue American society. And yet every terrorist attack gives more credibility to demagoguery. And it's all over, be it France, the Netherlands, Germany, the US. People are ready to join the party of fear. They will sacrifice everything to believe that they are safe, even their own humanity. So our role, we have a very important part to play in all this. Our role as a progressive church community is to help our nation hold on to its humanity. How we react to terrorism has become a measure of who we are as individuals and as a society. Each new attack unleashing horror, fear, grief, and anger will test our democracy's commitment to its core values. Our American society, Western culture, rests on human rights, equality, reason, and tolerance. Now, you know, and I know, that more innocent lives will be lost. We also know that there is no way for the police or really any security measures to track every vengeful killer or neutralize every weapon as commonplace as a truck. And experts tell us, and we go, wow, how is that possible? But think about it, it is possible. Experts tell us to normalize our lives. If you want to travel to Paris, go to Paris. If you want to go to a gay bar in Orlando, please go. And I really do think that most of us are, in fact, trying real hard to normalize our lives in the face of terrorist threats. Essentially, what's going on is that we want to hold on to our humanity. We want to preserve our freedom, our dignity. And by the way, things are perhaps coming a little bit back to normal, because I want to tell you that George Carlin special, which was recorded on September 10th, 15 years ago, will finally be released this Friday. In the face of terrorism, we must normalize our lives. We cannot forfeit our humanity by seeking scapegoats, damaging those lives so that we can pretend to be safe. And I hope that our commitment to preserving every shred of human decency will be evident on November 8th, Election Day. The best defense against terrorism is to stay true to what democratic societies really stand for. So be it. Can we turn our hymn books, please, to number 345 to conclude our service? Please be seated for a moment. You know, the moment was captured in an incredible photograph, an unforgettable image, a symbol of our resilience. 3 firefighters raising an American flag amid the ruins of the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. And soon after that, the flag disappeared. After flying at Ground Zero, the flag, or so it was believed at the time, was unfurled at Yankee Stadium, on naval ships, before returning to City Hall in 2002. And then they realized it turned out that the flag was not the right one. The real flag's whereabouts was unknown. It disappeared on the night of the terrorist attacks. And yet, just about 15 years later, this flag was recently found in Everett, Washington. And last Thursday, the flag became a permanent part of Lower Manhattan when it went on display at the National September 11th Memorial and Museum. The American flag carries for us different meanings. Sometimes we are extremely proud of it, as when the flag, 1969, was planted on the moon. Sometimes we feel huge embarrassment when our nation is at war, as in the Vietnam era. But whatever it evokes, it does represent us, does it not, It represents our society, our culture, and we must remain committed that our flag will represent the best of who we are. In the tragedy of 9/11, America pulled together as a nation like I had never experienced before or since. The heroics of first responders, the care given to the injured, the outpouring of love toward strangers captured the core goodness which made us all proud to be Americans. I pray that we never face such a disaster again. And I also pray that we as Americans can remember the good. Remember the good that dwells inside us all. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright